his employment status or what kind of things are going on in regards to his infraction of policy. We wondered if you guys have any questions before we start.
Yeah, I mean,
Lots of questions.
we got all kinds of questions. What type of ramifications are you guys thinking of?
Well, what we stated in the policy, what's in the book is termination.
Where does it say termination?
Possible dismissal.
Possible
Right,
dismissal.
Which,
Okay. But that's
which
where.
leaves a lot of leeway.
Right, but that's what we've been talking about as a staff is where are we going to start at? We understand we need to set an ethical standard in our company, especially regarding theft, setting an example for younger employees. So we want to hear from you all about why shouldn't we do something like that?
Well, if you want to set ethical standards, why was that not done with Hal?
It's a good question.
Hal was an interesting case. I believe that Hal was the first offender after the reminder, after the new policy was set. So we decided that it might be a learning curve issue with him.
Mm-hmm.
We also decided that the motivation wasn't there either, that Jim may have had, and that it might have just been an error on his part, an oversight.
He had only been on the repair job for 1 month, and Jim had been a repairman his whole career. So I think Jim should have had a lot more of an understanding about the policies, not to mention immediately after the situation with Hal, we went through those specific cases and what to do and how to respond to those. So I don't think there were any questions about, did he know what to do or not?
Well, the policy did just
I was
change.
gonna say, yeah. Well, if you're saying that
And,
if it's there was no problem because there was just a policy change, so he was a learning curve, then Jim should be the same way because there was also just another policy change, so he should
the same
then be
amount of
the
time
learning thing for
went
that.
by a month.
And even though he's an old employee, it's like if you're an old employee and you're doing a new policy, that's still a new job, basically.
Actually, I don't think that there was a change. I think that they just made clear that the rules were there and that they were reinforcing them. I don't think that they did a change. We didn't necessarily
do that.
change the rules. We were just saying, here are the rules, these are the procedures you guys need to follow, because obviously, with the situation with Hal, it wasn't clear to everybody. So that's why we sat down and reviewed them. We didn't change the rules per se. We just are sitting down and making sure that they're clear with everybody. So, yeah, there would be a learning curve with Hal because he's only been on the repair job for a month and Jim has been on it much longer. So, but it's still the same rules.
Well, it says on January 4th, a new procedure for reporting overflow coins in the machines was implemented, and all employees were instructed as to the procedure.
Mm-hmm.
And 26 days later is when Jim steals the money, the coins. And that's less than a month after, and Hal stole it a month later.
Mm-hmm. The issue I have there is that it would cause us to be holding our newer employees to a higher standard than we'd be holding our older and more experienced employees. You see, the way we view our company is that there's kind of a hierarchy of leadership, and we expect the higher ranked employees to serve as good examples as leaders for the younger ones. And I think a strict observation of new policies is something that he is responsible for. That's not something we're responsible to make amends for him. I believe that he should have been paying attention, and he should have made the whatever corrections necessary, or paying attention during the meeting. This is not just an issue of the actual action, this is an issue of leadership, this is an issue of responsibility.
And I mean, we feel like the company is responsible for Jim knowing the procedures.
Yeah, we also see the
well.
hierarchy importance, but we are seeing it as a point where there's a lot of communication problems between the upper level and the workers, because
Okay.
we think if there's two people that have been caught doing this in the last, however many months, I think, and they've both been at the company for a long time, don't have any problems. To me, that seems more like a reflection of the leadership and how you all are implementing the rules,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the workers. I don't think that this $28 is worth it to them for losing their job, and I don't think $28 is worth it to you all for losing these two employees. It looks more like a reflection on how this is happening from your all's point of view.
I think we agree too that we need to kind of revise the way that we train employees on this going forward. Like, we need to have a test kind of to see if they understand the procedures and all the policies. But it could, I mean, the intent is up for interpretation. Like, I think it's hard to say what the intent was in either case. You know, you could definitely make a case for either side, but the fact that he converted it into paper money is a little suspicious. Like, if he's using them to test the machines, I don't think he's not going to use coins if he's converting it. He's converted it into paper money. And I know $28 isn't a lot, but this was the first time we've investigated it with a special agent, so who knows how long it's been going on. And in so many cases of fraud, you have maybe not a lot taken at one point, but over time, like, you have a little bit taken and it really adds up. So we could have been losing a lot of money over 19 years. I just think it's a little fishy that it was converted into paper money if he's not.
Well, Jim could have been confused because when they changed the procedure and the new procedure required them to turn coins into a voucher first and then get their money or whatever. That Jim very well could have been confused with that, and you know, it's new, 25 days into it, could have very possibly made a understandable mistake.
Right. Yeah, I can see why it would have been a little confusing about going through the reimbursement process. He says that he's reimbursed himself in the past that way, so I guess other people have probably done the same, but $28 also seems like quite a bit to me for just testing these machines. And also he mentions that they often use overflow coins to test the machines, so I don't know like why he wasn't using the overflow coins.
But that was the old way of doing things, I'm pretty sure.
Also, let's see. You go ahead.
Okay, well, I know that it's an interesting point to say that it was a new policy, but it was also a brand new policy that what we had just explained, literally just explained, and then re-explained after the incident with Hal. So the issue is it's actually very recent. I think it would honestly be in the forefront of his mind, if not, rather than the back, because it was so recently explained.
Yeah, you can definitely look at that kind of both ways. I get what you guys are saying, like, it's not something that he's practiced for years, but once again, we've tried to make such a point that this is important, and we've tried to reinforce that. We brought him in, like, talked to him specifically, let him know this is important, this is something we're really focusing on moving forward. So, I don't know, it seems like 25 days later, it would be still in his mind.
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely make sense, but I mean, you still have to think about it. I mean, you know, people make mistakes even when they just find something out, and I feel like to completely terminate them for something like that would be a little ridiculous.
Yeah, our point, I mean, we're trying to do like a mutual like gain thing, because we want to have like a positive relationship for both the company and the laborer in the future. So with that, we're trying to say, like, we feel like the labor has not been heard, that they're not doing the job correctly, and it's mostly because of management, and that they're getting blamed for the management's problems and how they're implementing these procedures. Mm-hmm. So we're sorry that it took $28 to get here, but we're hoping that moving forward we can figure out a way where, you know, I know you all asked Jim in the beginning and like for his opinion and stuff, but I don't think it was really heard. So for now to sit down and really work with communicating with them, because I mean, if your repairmen like actually know what they're doing and they're happy, I feel like that's going to be better for you all in the future too, because you're going to have more productive workers.
And I do feel like there is possibly something that has to do with the communication between upper people and Jim, just because this has happened more than once, you know what I mean?
Right. And we're willing to look over oversights regarding communication, but this has been a very public issue as far as what happened to Hal. I'm sure Jim had known about that. I'm sure that it had been a very public issue in the workplace. This isn't just merely an issue of we need to be consistent, there's a communication issue. What we're looking at is a very public communication issue was very publicly dealt with and then disregarded by Jim. Okay, so I understand there might be an issue with communication as far as the issue with Hal, but the very public nature of what happened with Hal, it should be taken very seriously by our employees. I just don't see any reason why we should instantly think that this is an all communication issue and blame it on the management. I disagree with that. I disagree with the fact that he's responsible to learn his own curriculum that we put forth in front of him. Now, we did teach this curriculum. I do not think that you can just say that it's a management issue alone. I think that this is not only a management issue, which we will take some of that.
Right.
If there are issues happening, we want to address it. But we also want to address the issue with Jim being a seasoned employee, not taking the initiative to learn the policy that we put forth in front of him.
Right.
We did teach this material.
And if he didn't understand it, it would have been important for him to come forward and tell us that. Like, tell us, something's not clear to me. Like, obviously he's confused about it, he's unsure, so he needs to come forth and, tell us his concerns. And I think it's important for him to take accountability for learning these procedures. It's not really, we hold them accountable to the procedures that we put in place. It's their responsibility to learn it. It's not necessarily, we don't have to jump through all these certain hoops to teach it to each individual a specific certain way. Like, I agree with you guys that we should teach, test in the future to make sure that it's being understood, but I also think that he should have came forth and let us know if something wasn't as clear.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point you make, and we want to deal with that. Your point is that there might have been a communication issue, and we now see that management is partially responsible for that. So I think we can go ahead and say that termination is not something we're going to do today. Okay, Jim's a very important member of this team, respected member of the community, and firing him completely, I think, with the points that you all have made, would be a mistake, and I think it would be defaming a good guy. Okay, I think that there might have been some misplaced motivations as far as why he did that and the way he went about it, but also I do think that he might have thought it might not have been as big a deal as it is. Would you say that's fair?
I don't think he thought it was a big of a deal because I don't think that he thought that he was doing anything
Right.
incorrect.
Okay.
So what do you guys think that Jim deserves then? You don't believe he should be fired. We say we're on the same page. So then you do agree that he should be disciplined though?
We are thinking more of how to improve the relationship with you all and to improve the company and the working conditions more than, we don't think Jim did anything wrong, and we are seeing, we're, talking for the little people here, trying to, have them be heard. So we're more focused on him, we don't think he needs to have any discipline, because.
Okay.
But
Well,
we
that's
think-
not happening. This is an issue of ethical consistency. There needs to be a punishment put in place, or else we forego all of our ethical consistency with our employees. This will be a madhouse, is what I'm saying.
Well, we agree with the
Well-
ethical consistency, which is why we're a little confused why you all said that Hal was about to be, or Jim was going to be laid off when Hal wasn't. The consistency in them
Mhm.
is why we're confused.
I feel like when you guys make a rule change, just based off this information right here, at the time the rule was changed, the repair employees were reviewed on this conduct matter again. I don't think just a review might not be sufficient enough. If you keep having instances like that, I feel like maybe a more set in stone training procedure or something
Yeah,
like that
definitely.
would definitely be more beneficial than just
Mhm.
a review, because how broad is that anyway? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. That's what we're saying. Moving forward, we would want to improve the training process, and also it seems like people who've been on the job for longer, like Jim, he's been with the company for 19 years, so it's likely that he's maybe even forgotten some of the things he learned when he was trained back, 19 years ago maybe. So it's important that we kind of develop a perpetual training process, like an ongoing thing. We want to do that, and we also want to make sure that employees take a competence test after they complete the training. So we want to make sure, like you said, the review is kind of a broad thing. It's like, I'm not really sure what goes into that, but we want to make it more specific so that they are tested on the procedures and the policies to make sure that they know, and they'll have to achieve a certain score to move on through that, or otherwise take the training, go through training again until they can achieve that.
We were hoping for the same thing, actually, that it would be like a test,
Yeah.
and that could be like, your contract, because I feel like it's kind of like a misunderstanding on if they're prepared. And like, as far as y'all are saying, like, ethical consistency, and I know you've said you're holding Jim more responsible because he's seen as more of a leader. So I was wondering how the supervisor that said he was satisfied that Jim knew the procedure on January 30th when the incident happened, because obviously he's much more of a leader than Jim. And Jim did not say there was a problem. He said that he was satisfied that he knew. What kind of like punishment is he getting for this?
That would only make me more confident that Jim meant to overlook this policy. Okay, this is our leadership philosophy in the company, and if Jim demonstrated a thorough knowledge of it to his ability, I'm not going to throw him under the bus here. I'm going to trust him and say that Jim knew what he was doing and disregarded company policy. Okay, and that's all the evidence that I can look at right now. There's no evidence that Jim didn't know what he was doing. There's nothing that indicates that. There's no even way that you could know that, honestly, as far as the truth goes. We can only trust policy, really. And so policy says that this includes a punishment, possible dismissal. We're not going there. We want to reassure you that Jim and Jim's family even is an important part of this company to us. But we need to make sure that we're sending a good message to our employees. The message not being, we're just going to give out a 2-week thing for this every time, even though we said it would be worse. There's consistency there, and there's also consistency in saying we need to keep our word on this, okay? Because if we do, a pattern of leniency shows up, okay? The first one, we wanted to make an example, let everybody know that we're taking this thing seriously, but we weren't prepared to fire immediately for the reasons that you just stated. But if we keep going on with that pattern of even just a 2-week layoff, we'd be creating a pattern that says we don't keep our word. If you do something wrong, we're not going to punish you like we said we would. We're going to take it easy on you every time. That's not a message I'm prepared to send to my company, or a message I believe that is worth keeping Jim to send that message. Now,
was there a time specified that said there was going to be, after the 2 weeks, that it was going to like continue to get worse, or is that just something you all kind of decided?
that was a management decision.
Was it told to like the employees?
Well, I did punish him, and we do have the same policy. So that is what's written in our bylaws and in our policy, and that's what's communicated to him. It's in his employee training manual in the revised one. So I believe
I think we need to take a time out soon. I think we're getting off track on what's actually written, like what's being made
I just
up.
wanted to say one thing.
Yeah.
When we were going back to, all right, so basically the agent or the supervisor or whatever talked to Jim after Jim repaired the vending machines, and he said he was satisfied with what Jim knew. That is another very broad term, satisfied. Basically, it could have asked him 2 questions and been like, oh, okay, well, he knows what he's doing. You know what I mean? Or he could have went in depth for a long time and like made Jim show him everything and then say, oh, okay, Jim knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So that word is very broad, and I feel like it's hard to say Jim really didn't know what he was doing, or it's hard to say Jim did know what he was doing based off of that, just because that's broad.
Yeah, I think we can agree that we're not really sure how much Jim was taught as far as like what satisfied means. Was he tested on it, or was he just asked a couple questions? We can agree on that. We don't really know, but we can also agree that we also don't know Jim's intent. So, I mean, we can sit here and say he did know, and this is why, but I think you could definitely make an argument for both sides, and I just don't think there is a way to know. The only person who may know is Jim. So I think that's something we can agree on. We don't really know about what you said, and we're not sure also about Jim's intent though on the other side. So
Fair enough. Is it all right to take a break?
Yeah, it's-
Communicate.